It's done.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to do a Zoom session on how to use Zoom. And I've put together a quick little, not quick, but a slideshow of information that'll show you some of the features, some of the things that may have changed when the district decided to purchase a license. Some of the settings have become forced because it's something that the district feels is in the teachers and the students' best interests. There are also some additional features that might not have been there before we had the purchased version. And we're just going to walk through some of the best practices and some of the ways that you can use it with your students. So I'm going to screen share. And it's going to be this one. And last time I did this, I put my slideshow in present mode, but it didn't work out so great. So when I do slide sharing with slides, I tend to leave it just the screen that I see when I'm editing, and people can follow along a little bit better. There is a link at the top of the slide if you want to grab the slides yourself and follow along. The slides will also be linked with the video recording and the other resources for this session, so you'll have access to them later as well. So you can either just follow along and watch my screen, or you can open up your own window and follow along at your own pace. I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, comments, you can write them down as we go through. You can write them down on the side, or there is a chat box feature. If you know how to use that, you can chat on the side, and I'll check the chat when we take breaks throughout and see if any of those questions apply. So we are going to talk about today 4 major sections. The first one is scheduling or creating your Zooms and the different settings that that would involve. How to share your screen and some of the things that come along with that. How to get students to participate, or different ways that students can participate in what seems to be like a teacher-led session. And then we're also going to talk about breakout rooms and what those are, how they can be used, and some of the things you need to take into consideration when you do them. So first, scheduling. So this screen is just basically the steps of how to do the scheduling. There's also a video linked at the end of the slides where I go through these steps and show you in real time on Zoom how to do them. But basically some of the main points are when you go to the website, you want to make sure that you're logging in with your school email account.
That's all the Zoom meetings.
What?
He's a Zoom hound.
You want to make sure you log in with your school ID, and I use the sign in with Google button. I use that for anything that's school related. If it has a sign in with Google button, that's what I use. That way I don't have to remember 50 million passwords. I just click sign in with Google. I either click the button that says my school email account, or I sign in with my school email account, and I'm linked in, and it's fine. It makes everything easy. I don't have a pile of passwords I have on the side. You want to make sure that you give your meetings a title, because when you go to start them, you want to know which meeting you're starting. You don't want them all to be called my meeting, which is the default in Zoom. You want to give it kind of an interesting or distinctive title so you know which meeting you're going to be working with that day. The other thing some people have trouble with is if it's your first Zoom meeting you're scheduling, you want to make sure the time zone is correct. For some reason, Zoom has defaulted in the past to a Pacific time zone, which makes all of our meetings start 4 hours later than what we thought they were going to, which you can still start them. It's not a big deal. But the invitations go out to families and students, and they think it's 3 hours, 4 hours after when you really wanted to have it. So you want to double check that time zone. Even if it's not the first time, just give it a quick glance, make sure it's on Eastern. And there is a way to set the meetings up. So for example, these meetings that I'm hosting this summer, I only created 1 meeting, and I made it so that it is the same link, the same password, the same meeting ID, the same credentials to get into those meetings, no matter which, if it's a Monday meeting, a Thursday meeting, a Wednesday meeting, doesn't matter what time. I made 1 meeting link for all of them. I didn't make a separate one for each single time. So if it's something that you have going on all the time, for example, if you're holding reading groups or chemistry lab or check-in sessions, you can make 1 meeting. You can say it's happening every Monday at 3 o'clock, or you can say that it's open-ended and it's going to be whenever I decide to start those meetings. So that's something you can play with in those settings. We're going to go through some of the bigger settings, things like password protected, having a waiting room for your students, things like that. We're going to dive into that in the next couple slides. Then you want to click save. And then when you click save, it takes you to an invitation screen. And when you're on that invitation screen, you want to do two things. You want to add it to your Google Calendar, because that's going to help you stay organized and remember when all your meetings are. I know some of the schools like Memorial were keeping a school-wide calendar of when class check-ins were happening during the school closing. So that's the place to do that too, would be the add to calendar button. And there's also a place on the invitation screen where you can copy the link to the Zoom meeting. So that link's important because if you're using Google Classroom, or if you're communicating with families via email or Class Dojo, or however you're getting in touch with your families, they're going to need that link to get into your meetings. And the easiest way to get that to them is actually not through Zoom, not through Google Calendar. It's going to be through whatever communication device you're already using with them. So for example, teachers in middle school, high school, and even Woodland were really familiar with Google Classroom, but they were sending invites using Google Calendar or the Zoom platform, whereas the easiest way to get that information to their students was to take that link to post an announcement in their Google Classroom, and the kids could just click on it and get right in. So using what you already have in place to get the information to your kids is better than trying to teach them something new. Okay. We're going to go to the next one. So there are some settings that the district has decided are in the best interest of the staff and the students. And some of those are on the screen, and there's also some on the screen that are strongly recommended. They're not forced out, they're not automatically turned on, but they're a good idea to keep in mind. So the first one is the meeting ID. And for the meeting ID, you want to make sure that it's generated automatically, meaning that each meeting has its own unique ID. If you choose personal ID, all of your meetings are going to have the same ID. They're all going to have the same password, and kids are going to be able to get into them whenever they want. So you want to make sure that it says generate automatically. Password is forced out by the district. So that means that it's always turned on. You can't turn it off, but you can personalize the password. So for these sessions, instead of having it be those 7 letters and numbers that kind of automatically generated gobbledygook, I made it all uppercase Summer. So you can personalize it. I know teachers sometimes make it their room number or the teacher's initials. I mean, you can make it really short for little kids, like 2 or 3 characters, you know, straightforward. You can make it a little more complicated if you want for the older kids. Maybe it's, you know, something, you can call it science, you can call it chemistry, but you can make it whatever you want.
Hey, Sarah, I have a question about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No, that's okay.
so like when we came on, this is where I get confused because I'm not entering any password.
Because you clicked, so what's happening is there are actually 2 links that Zoom generates. It generates a great big long one that looks like it's 400 characters long. And it generates a really short one that just says zoom.us/ and then like 9 numbers. The really long one has the password encrypted in it. So when you click on that link, it automatically is entering the password for you and you're getting right into the meeting.
I see.
For students who are getting the link on one device, but typing in that 9-digit meeting ID, they're going to have to enter the password. And that's what stops Zoom bombing and stuff like that, because people will sit on Zoom and just type in like 9 numbers and be like, woohoo, I got in. So that password offers an extra layer of protection.
I see. Okay.
So, oh, sorry. Okay. So if we post, so I just want to make sure, if we post the link on Google, right, we're going to post the long link so they don't have to put in the password. But if, let's say, we email it to the families, we should send them the short link and the password. Is that correct?
So when you copy the invitation, you get all of it. So it's got time. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's that. So if you've ever gotten an invitation from like an administrator or a principal and you look at the invitation and it's got tons of stuff, it's got like a description, it's got like 10 time zones, it's got like all this stuff on it. That's the whole invitation. Obviously our students don't need that. But if you're sending it to them, there's a great big long link And then right underneath of that is meeting ID and meeting password. Those are the three things that you always want to post when you post your invitation, whether it's Google Classroom, email, Dojo, whatever it is. You want to copy the link, you want to copy the meeting ID, and you want to copy the password at all times. And I'll show you where all of that is. It's really easy, but when you do the automatic copy, you get all of it, which can be overwhelming, especially for our little friends. Okay? All right. So audio is another one that's defaulted to both. The district pushed that out. And the reason for that is most of our kids are going to be signing in on a Chromebook, an iPad, a computer, or whatever. But there may be a few students who are trying to sign in more like a conference call with a phone and a screen and that kind of stuff. So that audio allows them to get their audio using a standard phone headset type deal. Join before host. This is another one pushed out by the district. This basically means just like if any of you signed on before I signed on, you couldn't get in until I got in. It gave you a sign saying waiting for the host to start this meeting. And that's for your protection, but also for the students' protection. So they can't join meetings whenever they want to and get in and start chatting with their friends and we have no idea what they're talking about. Recording the meeting is always a good idea. I know there's some legal stuff going around about all of that. Best practice would be don't post the recordings of the students, but it's good to have them in case anybody does a he said, she said type situation. It's just good to have that backup and that evidence of this is what happened while we were in that meeting that, you know, in case anybody says differently. And I'll show you where that is. I'll show you how to do it. And I'll show you where the recordings are stored after the fact. So those are the basic requirements. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that you might want to turn on or turn off and some of the things that might make it easier for you to manage your students while you're in your Zooms. So on this page, when you're creating the meeting, all of these particular settings show up on the meeting creation screen. The next screen are going to be things that you have to go in and set up kind of in advance. The registration button requires that the users be registered with Zoom. This is not something that we recommend turning on because not all of our students are signing into Zoom using their school email address. Their school email addresses are registered with Zoom. That was one of the things that we bought Zoom for, was to make the ease of logging in, and you know, we get all of these cool features and stuff like that. And the kids kind of came as a package deal. But there's tons of kids out there that are signing on with mom and dad's iPad or big brother's Chromebook because he doesn't have one of his own, that type of thing. So to turn on the registration might actually prevent some of your students from logging in. And in the past, if you've heard students say, I couldn't get in, this may have been turned on and that may be why they couldn't get in. There is a video option that allows you to determine if the video is automatically turned on when you join the meeting. I like to leave mine on because I like to have my face show up right away. I like for you guys to show up right away. You may have noticed when you joined the meeting, there was a box prompting you to allow audio and allow video. That's because I have mine turned on. If you prefer for it to default to stay off and students have to click the video button to get it to turn on, that would be something that you turn off. So that's personal preference. That might be, I mean, that's whatever you feel more comfortable with. Both are fine. I like to have my participants muted when they enter the Zoom. It makes things a little bit easier from the beginning. It might ask you to join audio, but then you'll notice that you're muted. You're not automatically turned on. It makes it so that that inevitable background noise that's going on as kids are getting settled, mom and dad in the kitchen, the dog barking out the window, all of that stays muted until they decide to turn on their microphone. Authenticated users. This is kind of tied to registration. I talked to the Zoom guy. I wasn't really sure how they were different. Authenticated might be users that you've approved and said, yes, they can join this Zoom. I don't really understand the difference, but again, it's one of those ones that if students ever said they couldn't get in, it could have been because this was turned on. So you want to make sure this is turned off. So registration and authenticated, you want off. Breakout rooms, they can be pre-assigned. I think this works better when you have that registration and authenticated users, because when you have kids signing on with mom's iPad or dad's cell phone, you don't know what account they're coming in with. So it makes it kind of hard to pre-assign those. So teachers who have tried to pre-assign have had some trouble because kids come in with different usernames and you don't always know what they're going to be. And then finally, alternative hosts. If you co-teach with anybody, if you work together as a team, this is a good place to add that other person. I believe you can only add one other person, but they will have the same meeting controls. So you'll notice on the bottom of your screen, your meeting controls are different than what you may have had when you led a Zoom. They're much more restricted. You have less options. But if you have a co-host or an alternative host, they'll have the same full dashboard that you have when you're leading a meeting. Yes, Astrid.
So I don't have a chat button at the bottom, which when I lead, I know that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when I've had my Zoom meetings, my students have had that chat button because they started chatting. So is there a way to disable the chat button?
Yes, and I think I might have done that when I was playing around with my settings for this because I'm noticing I don't have it either. I think I might have turned it off. Yes, there is a way to totally turn off chatting altogether. There's also a way to totally turn off private chatting so that anything that they post, everybody sees. And there's also a way to do, you may have noticed Tim does it in his staff meetings where when people chat, they only chat to him. You can only chat to the host. You can't chat out to anybody else in the session. So I'll show you where all of that is. And like you said, I think I did that for this meeting by accident because usually people are chatting up questions and links and stuff all in the sidebar.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Patty.
Sarah, can I ask another question? Like, so along those lines, like right now you're presenting your screen, but
Yes,
like if I wanted to chat with you right now,
mm-hmm.
I can't really see the taskbar. Is that normal? Like I can't
So when the host goes into screen sharing, what it does is it forces everybody else's screen to go full screen so that you can get the most out of my screen, right? But if you upper right hand corner, you're on a PC or a Mac?
I'm on my school PC.
So on a Mac, it's different. On a Mac, it has the red, green, and yellow buttons in the left-hand corner, but most other computers have the buttons in the right-hand corner, the X, the square, and the minus. So there's a way to exit full screen. It might say exit full screen, or it might be like a square. I forget exactly what it says, but you can then minimize it. And I mean, let's face it, we're teachers. We're always doing something else in the background. I do it all the time during staff meetings and stuff. I minimize the meeting and I do other things while I'm listening. You might not.
Okay, hold on, Sarah. I'm really trying to. So is that on just my PC? I don't see
on your Zoom window. Yep. So your Zoom
on my Zoom window.
Cool. Yep.
So up in the, you said up in the right-hand corner.
Right-hand corner. Yep.
So I see it says hide thumbnail video, small active speaker. That's swap shared screen with video.
Is there anything that says like exit full screen?
No.
I see a view options, and on that I can click down and you can exit.
There you go.
View on, oh, so wait, sorry.
No, that's okay. My screen just looks totally different than yours right now.
I only see you guys on the right-hand side.
And you can move us, I think, right, guys? You can like drag us around.
Oh, yeah. Present with video, present. But that's you. That's your. I just don't see it. I don't.
Okay.
Maybe I don't.
No, you have it. I'm not sure totally what it says. So when we're finished with this, what I'll have you do is I'll have you screen share to me, and then I'll my screen says so I can help you find it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so these are all settings that show up when you're creating the meeting. So these are things that you can adjust per meeting. You can turn them off and on depending on who you're meeting with. This set of settings are a little bit more advanced, and these are things that it's kind of like all or nothing. You go into your settings of your Zoom account, not of individual meetings, and you turn these on or off for all meetings. And I think, Astrid, this is where I went in and I turned off chat by mistake. So one of the things, the first one obviously is chatting. You can allow people to chat. You can make it so they can only chat directly to you. You can make it so that private chatting between participants, so like, for example, if Patty and Astrid wanted to sit there and have kind of a sidebar conversation, that could be the kind of thing that I can turn off or on. And the other really cool thing that you would want to go in, and I'll show you where it is you want to auto save your chats, meaning that you don't have to prompt Zoom to save your chats. When you record, it does save them. So if you're recording your meetings, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're ever having those like spur of the moment meetings and you have a couple of students who might be chatting over there and you're not sure what they're going to say, this might be something that you want to turn on. Sometimes in the meetings with principals or admin, you may hear the ding, ding, ding of when people are coming and going in the meeting. That's one of the advanced settings. You can turn that off or on. So if you're hosting the meeting and you want to know while you're talking if people are coming or going during your meeting, this would be the place to turn that off and on. You can poll your participants, meaning you can ask them quick yes, no, which of these 4 apply to you type of questions. And to allow that, to turn that on, this would be the place to do that. So right now, if I wanted to, I think. Oh. I can go into my Zoom. I can add a question. Pull that out of the way. And then I can post that to you, I think. And then it should come up to you when I post it at the end. It shows up. But you basically type in just a quick question. I think it gives you room for 12 possible answers that the people can pick from, like a multiple choice question, and then they answer it. And then you'll get the responses at the end of the meeting. Where did my screen go? I lost it. Here it goes. Okay. You can turn on or off the options to share your Zoom screen. So one of the options when you're screen sharing is to show your whole screen, not just a particular window. And one of the things, so for example, if I was trying to provide one-on-one support about a specific Zoom type of question, when I share my screen, usually you can't see any of my Zoom toolbars or screens or windows or anything like that, but I can turn that on so that when I share screens with somebody, they'll actually be able to see, like, this is what the control toolbar looks like. This is what the videos look like. This is what this looks like. So they can actually see what the Zoom interface buttons are. Usually you're not going to need that. That's really only for like tech help type stuff. But if you wanted to turn that on, you could. It doesn't hurt anything. And then you can also adjust who can or can't share screens. So when I meet with teachers, I have it set up that anyone can share the screen. So for example, Patty's having a trouble finding out where that full screen button is. She's going to be able to share screens in a little bit so that I can look at her screen and help her. With students, you might not want to have that turned on because you might not want them clicking the screen share button and showing everybody and their brother what's going on their device. You can also say, there's a way in there, so like if I'm sharing, I can turn it off so that other people can't interrupt or turn off my screen sharing. So if you are allowing screen sharing, you might not want to allow them to interrupt each other's screen sharing to kind of kick each other in and out. No, it seems a little convoluted. Astrid.
So the first thing that you said about them being able to see all your buttons, what setting is that?
So in the advanced settings, about, I believe it's halfway down the screen, I can show you more specifically. There's a way to allow sharing of the Zoom window or show Zoom when sharing. And that's where that would be.
So but what is it called? Like what do we want to choose?
It honestly doesn't matter. Either one is fine, but I don't know if there's many instances where you would need to share your Zoom windows. Do you know what I mean? So usually you wouldn't even need it. So it's not something you necessarily, but if you're having a student who's having a lot of trouble navigating Zoom and figuring out where things are and what buttons to click, you might want to turn that on so that you could do a smaller tutorial with that student to say, here's the videos, here's the screen share button, here's the chat button, here's the, so that they could actually see what it looks like. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so like if we wanted to teach a parent how to use Zoom.
That would be
then
something
we
to
could
turn
do that.
on. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Especially if it's in another language, because I can't do that. I tried. Some teachers over the school closure had some trouble using the annotation, the whiteboard, the remote control features, and we found out that's because they were turned off in their advanced settings. So if you plan to use the annotation tools or the whiteboard tool, you would want to make sure that this is turned on. And remote control means that, so for example, when Patty shares, so that I can look at what's going on with hers, I'm going to actually request that she gives me control of her screen so that I can click around on her screen and figure out what's going on with it. Students can do that to the teacher too. So when the teacher shares her screen, the students, you can say, okay, Astrid, I want you to request remote control, and you will have to show them where this is. But once they've requested control, they're now the mouse on your screen, and they can like play those ABCI games and click stuff on your screen and stuff like that. They can actually be the mouse on that screen on your computer. They can't get in and like mess things up and stuff like that, but they can at least interact on the screen that you're sharing, which is pretty cool when it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it is pretty cool. 3 more. Again, these are in the advanced settings. These are ones you have to go and set up in your Zoom account, not when you're making the meeting. Zoom does offer the option for closed captions and language translations. However, they are generated by participants in the meeting. So if this is something you needed, closed captions or language translations, you would need a participant, for example, a co-teacher, a TA, an EL teacher, a SPED teacher, whatever, a co-teacher, someone in there who can be creating those captions and those translations. I've never actually personally used them. I don't know if they show up on the screen or if they show up like in a sidebar. But if that's something that you're looking to do, we can delve into that a little deeper. I'm sure there's YouTube videos out there about them. But like I said, I've never used them. It is an option if that's something you need for your meetings or your students, particularly like a parent-teacher conference or something like that. It could be really helpful. You can allow students to give nonverbal feedback. There's things like you're going too fast, thumbs up, raising your hand, all of that kind of stuff. Those I think are still on for you guys. You can click them on your screen. I know Astrid was raising her hand a little while ago. So you can turn those off and on. You can allow the kids to do those or not do those. And then also, have you ever seen the meetings where people have like outer space in their background or like the jungle or stuff like that? You can turn that off. You can make it so that they can't do that if you don't want them to do that. However, keep in mind, some of our students might be joining your Zooms from unusual situations, so they may want to mask whatever's going on in the background for them. So you might want to leave that on for depending on your population and who you're dealing with. You know your students hopefully better than I do. So, and then the last one is email notifications. You get emails when people join your Zoom and you haven't started it yet. You get emails when someone accidentally clicks your link and it's Monday and my Zoom is until Thursday, but on Monday I got an email saying, Bob joined your Zoom meeting. He's waiting for you. And I'm like, wait, there's no meeting today. But you can go into this section of the settings and decide what Zoom emails you about in terms of video recordings are ready or so-and-so answered your poll or whatever it is. You can turn those off and on, whatever suits your needs. So those are the settings. I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. Questions?
Yeah, so for the email notifications, so that's happened to me. So how do I go into my Zoom meeting to see who's there, or do I just let them, like, yeah, I didn't know. I've had that happen with my students.
Yep, so when you get the email, it should say so-and-so is waiting for you, and it's whatever name they signed in with. Like, for example, when I did the Tuck Help ones, Dan was always on before I was, and he would always just go ahead and click in before I was ready to click. So every single time I get an email saying, Dan Nelson is waiting for you. So it should tell you who it is.
Okay.
And it could say, Mom's iPad is waiting for you, and then you have absolutely no idea who it is.
Right.
only way to know who that is, because that's the name they gave themselves, is to go in and join the meeting, figure out who it is, and be like, oh, wait, we are meeting on Wednesday, not Monday.
Okay.
But also for a lot of people, they'll click on the link just because it's a link, not because they want to join it right now, but they'll click on it because, oh, it's a link and my teacher told me I should click on all the links, kind of a thing. And so they may realize that it's not Wednesday, but they clicked on it to make sure that it works. So a lot of times I've found is when that happens and I go to join to be like, hey, wait, they've already left. They've already figured out that it's not time, because there's also that box that pops up and says, you're joining Thursday's 9 a.m. meeting. It's Monday at 2 o'clock. Like they've already figured some of that out on their own, but they just clicked it because that's what they do. Anything else?
So Sarah, are you recommending then turn that off, like just the email notifications? I mean, if
I keep, for that particular one, I keep mine on, just so sometimes I forget I have a Zoom. I'll get an email that says, so-and-so's waiting, so-and-so's waiting, so-and-so.
okay, oh yeah,
So I keep that particular one on. I've turned off ones for like, your video recording is ready, because I have so many video recordings that if I get an email every single time, I'm like, who's waiting for my meeting? And it's, your video's ready. I'm like, okay, really?
mm-hmm.
It's just what's preference to you, what you wanted to be notified about. It's totally personal preference.
Okay, thank you.
Astrid.
So right now I can see up to 12 people on my screen. And of course I had 13 students. So how can I see everybody? Like, let's say I have 24 students. Can I see everybody on the screen at the same time?
Yes, I forget where, hold on. There's a way to make it up to 50. And I did it the other day and it's awesome. And I forget where it was. I don't know. I have to find it. I know that there is a way, because like you said, I get to like, I think mine maxed out at 20 because my screen's a little bit bigger. And then it starts going into like page 2, page 3, page 4. And it's really annoying. There's a way to make the default 50. Now everybody's really small, but at least they're all on one screen as long as you don't have more than 50 people in your meeting. I'll find out where that is, because I did do it and I was like, awesome. The other side of that though is when you screen share, it doesn't matter how many people you put that grid on, you still get those little tiny pictures on the side and you're going to have to scroll through them. So when you're screen sharing, you might want to have other adults in the room to kind of help monitor various children. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right. So the next one is actually screen sharing. Look at that. Whoops. It's just a quick how-to screen, and then we can kind of talk about some of the drawbacks of the different ways to do it. So when you're on your Zoom toolbar, you should see right now a screen share button, or it may have turned off because I'm sharing right now. But like I said, for my sessions, I keep screen sharing on for everybody. Depending on your children and your classes, you may want to only have that for the host. But it is the big green screen share button on the toolbar. And when you click that, it pops up a new window and you have choices. So the very, very first tile in those choices is always your full screen, which means if you click everything minimized, the children, the participants are going to be able to see your background. If you navigate between various windows, if you have 10 things open and you're clicking on Word, and then you're clicking on Google Chrome, and then you're clicking on PowerPoint, and then you're opening this and you're opening that, they're going to be able to see it all. It doesn't matter what you do, they can see it. They are looking at your entire screen. There's also the option to do a blank whiteboard space. And when you click that, it opens a new window. It looks like a blank piece of paper. You can use the pen and the annotation tools. You can draw all over. A lot of teachers use that for math specifically, because it's easier to write the numbers and the characters for math on there. They'll use it for illustrating things, like when things require more of a diagramming type of environment, they'll use it for that. They might just use it for like, this is how the water cycle goes, or this is how many groups of 10 you need to make, or, you know, whatever it is. If it's relayed better in hand-drawn materials, you know, all those cool stuff that we used to write on the whiteboard in the classroom, if that's the best way to get the information across, you use the whiteboard. You can also screen share your iPad or your iPhone. Unfortunately, this doesn't work for Android devices. It only works for iOS. The only caveat is you have to be on the same Wi-Fi network that your Zoom device is on. So I was playing around with it yesterday, and it said, you click on it, and then it says on your device, make sure you're on this network, open up this window, and then type in this password or this character or whatever it is. So it gives you on-screen directions of how to do that, and it walks you through the process. And then what the students see on their screen is what's on your phone or your iPad instead of what's on your computer. Then you can also choose, what I've done this time is my individual window. I'm only showing you the screen right now that has these tabs on the top, these Google Chrome tabs. Everything else on my screen, like my Zoom window, my Spotify, my PowerPoint that I have going on in the background, if I got out of this window, you wouldn't see any of that. The screen would go dark. So if you only want students to be able to see one window, one browser, you want to pick the one that you want them to be able to see. And it shows you all of them. Like when I click my screen share, I have like 10 things to choose from because I have so much stuff open on my computer right now. The only one about that is, like I said, when you minimize it or close it, it will pause or stop your screen sharing because students aren't looking at the screen you want them to look at anymore. Once you've picked the screen you want to share, there are 2 audio questions at the bottom. I forget exactly what they say, but you only want to play with those if you're sharing a video with your students. Now, when you're sharing a video with your students, you have to make sure you're following like copyright and all that. Like you can't sit here and show a Disney movie over Zoom. You just can't. But if you found a short educational video or something on YouTube that you think all the kids should be watching together and it's important that you watch it all together, you could do that, but you want to turn on both of those options at the bottom of the screen sharing. I forget what they say. There's 2 of them. You don't need to do anything with them if you're just sharing a presentation like I am. But if you're going to share anything video, audio related, you want to turn them on and then click share. We talked about, it doesn't matter how many people fit in your grid on your regular screen. When you screen share, it automatically defaults to that sidebar. You can adjust the size of that sidebar. So like right now I'm looking at 5 people. I could change that and resize it on my screen and look at you all at the same time, but it takes up practically the whole screen and I can't see the screen that I'm sharing. So it's kind of counterproductive. It doesn't really do what I need it to do. But I can scroll through them and I can see them. It's a little more cumbersome than your regular sharing. And then you get a new toolbar when you screen share. It floats around. You can drag and drop it wherever you want it to go. It defaults to the very top of your screen. And a lot of teachers say, well, now I can't click on my tabs, or now I can't click on my extensions or my bookmarks or my whatever. Just drag it somewhere else. I like to drop mine on the bottom because there's very little that I use on the bottom, especially in PowerPoint where it says speaker notes. So right now my toolbar lives over top of my speaker notes because I don't use them. But then once you are done sharing, there's like a little red button on that toolbar that says stop share. And when you click stop share, it goes back to normal and you guys lose my screen and my screen goes back to my grid view. So questions about screen sharing? Okay. I'm going to keep going. So student participation. Zoom can be a little tricky. It can be very like lecture in the front of the room, like where you're just telling the kids, here's, how this works. Here's how adding with regrouping is. This is how it's going to go. And they can just totally tune out and not pay any attention. So you want to find ways to get them to participate, things that they can do while you're working together, kind of make it a little bit more collaborative. One of the things that they can do is they can grab control of the teacher's screen, which we talked about that a little bit, but there is a remote control button on your presenting toolbar when you're screen sharing. One of them says remote control, and I can give remote control to anybody that I want. So if I'm going to give remote control to Dorothy, I clicked on that. You should have gotten a pop-up on your screen, and you can either accept it or decline it. And if you accept it, now you get to control my screen and click around on my screen.
So only
Dorothy, one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So now Dorothy's in charge. Dorothy's scrolling around on my screen. She can do whatever she wants. And then when I'm done with her doing that, I can abort control. When I click on the remote control button, I can abort control and I can take control back, and now I'm in charge. And I can do that to another person. I could give that to Patty. I could give that to Astrid. I could give that to anybody else on the screen. And I'm only calling on those 4 people because they're the first 4 people in my thing, and they're the only 4 people I can see right now. I can annotate on this screen. I can draw on it. I can have the kids draw on it. Like if I said, which one is the most important on this slide right now? I could give someone control. They could circle it. We could talk about parts of a sentence. We could underline adjectives. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. We can count how many words, where's the missing punctuation. You can do your morning meeting on here where you write your letter and it has all the errors, and you can have different kids take control and identify the errors. There's lots you can do. Are there going to be kinks? Yes. Is it not going to work sometimes? Absolutely. But it's a great way to try and get the kids engaged, and they love being like, oh, I get to control the teacher's computer. Especially your littles are really going to like that. So you can also, what they call app smash. That's where you use something else while you're using something else. So you're using 2 things at the same time. Some teachers have tried using things like Google Docs or Google Slides. They'll just keep it on gallery view so that you see everybody's face. Send out a link to a Google Doc or a Google Slide that you want people to work on or answer questions on and collaborate on. And everybody's working on that at the same time while you're still on Zoom, just looking at each other's videos. So Zoom is really more of the, I can see everybody's face, but the actual work is happening somewhere else. Another one that's come up over the summer that people really like is called Jamboard. And Jamboard is another Google product, but it's basically an interactive whiteboard where everybody can collaborate, everybody can draw, everybody can make links, everybody can insert pictures. The only thing with it is you have to invite everybody. Like you can't send out the link to the Google Jamboard. You have to add everybody as an editor. So if you have a class of 125 kids, this isn't going to be the best tool for you. If you have a class of 20 kids, you can just paste in all of their email addresses, their Google email addresses. They'll be editors, and then when you share the link, they'll be able to work on it. It just depends on how many kids you have going. You might not want 125 kids collaborating on the same thing anyway. You might want to break them into groups. So you can use the chat. Obviously, we can't because I turned it off. But you could use the chat to have the kids ask questions, to have the kid post ideas, do different things like that. You can use the nonverbal feedback, the hand raising to kind of promote discussion and get the kids chatting and talking. And then you can also use the breakout rooms, which provide a smaller group and make it more manageable for everybody's audio to be off. So we'll get into that in a second too. Questions so far? Okay. All right. Breakout rooms are awesome. How many of you have ever been in a Zoom with a breakout room before? They're cool. So what they do basically is they allow the kids, like we said, is to be in smaller groups. So when it's a group of 25 or even 125, having all the kids talk at the same time is impossible. It's not going to work. But you could put them into smaller groups of 3 or 4, and they can actually have a discussion. They can do those small group projects that they do in the classroom when they're all in their homes or in the library or wherever they are. They can have them. They can still do them. So the 2 main ways to get them into those groups, we already talked about how pre-assigning them might not be the best idea. The 2 ways that I found to be the most successful is to, as kids are joining, like those first 5 minutes when you're waiting for everybody to join, you kind of assign them as they come in. You can kind of wait till like 5 kids join, and then you can kind of spread them out into whatever rooms they want to go in. So you've allowed them in, you've let them in from the waiting room, and now you can kind of put them in their breakout groups. The other option would be to have your co-host or your second adult in the room do that as you're going through your introduction or your mini lesson or whatever it is. They can sit there and do that on the side while you don't have to stop your teaching and the kids are all looking at your face, focusing on your computer for 5 minutes while you're figuring out who goes where, because we know that all happens. Best practice, this is important to note. The breakout rooms are not all recorded. The recording follows the meeting host. So let's say I have 4 breakout rooms going at one time. I'm in room 1. The recording is recording room 1, but 2, 3, and 4, the recording's not capturing. If I get out of room 1 and jump into room 2, now the recording is in room 2 for while I'm in there, and it has stopped recording room 1. So even though, yes, we are recording our sessions and we have them for security's sake, the recording does not record everything in all of the rooms. So you want to make sure that if you have 4 breakout rooms, you're planning to have 4 breakout rooms, including yourself, you would probably want 4 adults in that meeting so that an adult can be present in each of the rooms, just to make sure that everything's going the way that it should. Kind of like a moderator or a facilitator. It's just, I don't know how to say this. We don't want anything to happen. We don't want anyone to say so-and-so was bullying me or so-and-so did X, Y, and Z, and we have no way of proving it because we were on a virtual meeting. So as long as we have that adult in that room to kind of monitor, that's going to be your best way to kind of keep your hands on those breakout rooms. Okay? Yeah, Astrid.
So I was in a breakout room and it said, you know, like 30 seconds to return. Is that something that we have to, excuse me, or it automatically does that?
It automatically. So when you set up the breakout rooms, when you send people to their breakout rooms, it gives them that countdown. It says you're being sent to breakout room 4, and it gives you like a 5-second countdown. They can either go ahead and click and get in, or they can wait the 5 seconds. It's fine, but that's automatic. And the same thing for the callback. When I end the breakout sessions, it pulls you all back. You can join automatically, or you can just wait out the timer and it'll pull you back. That's not something we have to set up. All right. Some people have said, I don't know how to use breakout rooms. I don't know what to do with them. These were just some ideas that I came up last night while I was watching my husband play video games. So you can do chemistry labs and have lab partners. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do. You can solve complex math equation type things, kind of talk to each other. These were just some of the ones that appealed to me as more of like an elementary level person. But basically anything that you would do in your classroom in small groups or in partners or in conferencing type situations, you could pull it off in a breakout room. You just have to make sure that you have enough monitors. All right. And then these were a few of the other things that I came up with that are important to know, but didn't really fit into any of the categories. You want to make sure that you have ground rules in place for your Zooms. I know that there's a kind of slide screen somewhere on the district technology webpage that says, this is what students are expected to do during Zoom meetings or Google Hangouts. But just make sure that they know if you want everybody muted when they come in, they need to know that. If you want them to raise their hand to talk, they need to know that. Like, you need to make sure that your ground rules are very clear and that they know. For example, one of my kiddos, they actually did Google Meets, but the teacher said, nobody gets to use the chat. She forbid using the chat. They weren't allowed to use the chat. She didn't know how to turn it off, but she basically said, you can't use the chat. The only people who are allowed to use the chat is if I say, okay, you can use the chat because your microphone's not working. And that was the only time they were allowed to do that. They had to stay on mute until she called on them. So she was very clear in her expectations. My other child, the teacher didn't lay down the ground rules so well. So everybody was talking on top of everybody. It was a hot mess. She hated her Zooms because she didn't know what was going on. Everybody was talking. There was tons of background noise. So it may seem a little bit dictatory, but the more structured your Zooms are, the more enjoyable they're going to be for the kids because they're going to get more out of them. So it might seem like, oh, you can't talk until I call on you. But when you have 24 people talking, nothing gets accomplished. Some teachers have, when the kids join the Zoom, they've already screen shared, and on their screen is like a screen of reminders or like, you know, don't forget to do page 84 in your workbook or, you know, whatever it is, but just kind of like almost like a morning warm up, like what they see when they come in the room on the board. You can have that same kind of screen when they come into your Zoom.
Sarah, sorry, like that sounds so interesting, but how do you do that?
I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll show you. You also want to remind them that everything is being recorded. Even if we know that not all the breakout rooms are being recorded, but remind them that chats are recorded. All of those things that they're doing, they don't know that all of that is recorded all the time, especially some of our older students. You might want to remind them so that they know. And then I already shared a few of my examples, but just kind of things that you think are going to work. And it's okay if those ground rules change over time because you realize that it's not what's best for your students, but just make it really clear to them. So for that entry screen, basically all you have to do is put together a slide So open up a Google Slides, put your rules or whatever you want on there like you would right on the board. And then
Okay.
as they're coming in, share your screen. And then that would be the screen that you're sharing so that when they log in, they don't see the gallery view. They are automatically directed into that screen share, like what you're seeing right now.
And why does it have to be a Google slide? Why can't it be like a Google Doc? Just
Oh, it can be whatever. I just like
it can be
slides.
whatever.
Because
You
things
just
are a
like
little bit
slides.
more movable.
I see. Okay.
Girl.
So yeah, you just have something written out and you're just
However,
presenting that.
whatever you want.
But if you're presenting that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still seeing them in the corner.
You'll still see them. Yep. And then you might have to scroll through, and then on your bar, it'll tell you how many, like right now I have 11 participants. So I can see how many people are there. And if I click on that participants button, I'll get a list of everybody there. So I'll see who's missing and who I need to catch up with, or like, okay, I have all of my 12 kids. I can keep moving. I can move on to the next thing. So there's a way to see who's there without actually seeing their video. There's a button that you can see who's in it and who's not.
Okay.
Astrid.
Okay, so God forbid we get Zoom bombed.
Yep.
What do we do? Is there a
There's
way to kick somebody out?
Well, you can kick somebody out, but the best thing to do would be to automatically shut off the meeting. Just shut it off. But what you can, so you can do one of two things. You can end the meeting, and when you click end the meeting, if you've ever led one, you'll see that it says leave the meeting or end for all. You want to end for all. If you can get rid of, so if you have a student, that would be my best practice for Zoom bombing, is just get out of it. If you have a student who's being unruly and you need them to leave and they're being distracting and they're not following any of your ground rules and you're done with them, you can click on participants at the bottom. I don't think you guys have participants because you're not co-host, but the co-host meeting host has participants.
We do. I do.
You can click on someone when you click up the participants, and there's a more button. And in the more button, you can remove them, it's called. Or you can put them in the waiting room, either where I like to remove them if they're being, just get them out.
Does it say remove? Because on
On
mine,
mine, it does. On yours, it doesn't, because you can't, because you're not
so
the,
it does say remove.
it says remove. It's almost all the way at the bottom. There's remove and there's report right under it. You don't want to report them.
Can you block them? Like, let's say they
That
want
blocks
to jump back in?
Nope, they can't get back in. So if it's a recurring meeting, so let's say you have the same meeting every Thursday, they'll be able to get in next week, but they can't get back into this meeting right now. If it was just someone that you wanted to kind of put on timeout, you put them in the waiting room, give them like 5 minutes and then let them back in. But honestly, just remove them, just kick them out and then get them back in next week. Have that conversation with them and their parents and be like, this is what happened. This is why I kicked you out. We can't have this.
So, like, for example, sometimes I want to, what's happened with my students is, you know, I need to talk to 2 of them at the very end.
Yes.
And I just kind of want the rest to just, you know, leave.
Yep.
And sometimes they'll just sit there.
Yeah,
you
you
know,
can kick them out.
so I'd have to click on every single, on all 10, you know, whoever,
Yep.
10 of them, and then click on remove.
Yep, you would.
Okay.
So you could either do it that way, or you could end the meeting, but have already talked to those 2 kiddos and be like, I'm going to end the meeting, but I want you to get back in as soon as you get out. Like, I want you to click on the link again and come back in.
That's, I mean, that's what I did. I just,
Yeah.
you know, okay.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, there's no easy way to do that. You could put them in a breakout room because nobody else can get in the breakout room. While those other 10 kids are just kind of sitting there hanging out, you could say, okay, Dorothy and Patty, I'm going to put you in this breakout room. We're going to have a little chat, and everybody else kind of. So, I mean, there's different ways around it, but really there's not a tried and true, this is how you do it. Oh, you can remove participants. See, look at that. When you do your recordings are stored on the Zoom website. They're stored in the cloud. So when you go to your account, when you log into your account, on the sidebar where the settings are, where the meetings are, there's one that says recordings. That's where they are. You can share out a link if you needed like to have evidence for your principal or administrator or whatever. You could share out the link, or you can download them. For the purposes of this, I've been downloading them and putting them in my Google Drive and YouTube and sharing them that way. But for the most part, you won't really need those recordings unless something happens and you need evidence of something. There are additional features and settings within the icons of the toolbar. You'll notice some of them have those little drop-down caret menu type things. You can click on those and kind of go in and tweak some things, like you could turn on your HD camera. You can make it so your camera smooths out your wrinkles and stuff like that. There's a way, there's a way to allow or disallow participants from muting and unmuting themselves. So I could have set this meeting up so that everybody's on mute and you can only talk when I click on unmute, right? One of my kids' teachers did that too. But I like to have it so that people can mute and unmute themselves, especially when I'm screen sharing, because I can't necessarily get to everybody in a timely manner. But if you're gonna have all 50 kids on the same screen, you can unmute them pretty quickly. So that's up to you. We talked about sending invites. We talked about putting that information in an email, adding it to your Google Calendar. So one of the things that came up was, for example, the IEP meetings and the team meetings at the end of the year. A lot of people were saying they were losing these Zoom links, that they weren't getting invited or they didn't know when things were happening. So the way I kind of worked with them to figure that out was, for example, Dorothy, let's say you're the team leader. You've made the meeting in Zoom, you have the link, you add it to the calendar, right? You then want to invite the rest of your team to that Google Calendar invite. Things like that need to go through Google Calendar, things that are more district-based, because then that way they have the link, it's added to their calendar, they have the time, they have the spot. But when you're inviting your students and your families, not all of them have access to Google Calendar and know what to do with Google Calendar. Hopefully our staff members do, but our families don't necessarily do that. So that's why we email or Google Classroom or Class Dojo the links for students and families. When it's staff-based meetings or team meetings or IEP meetings, you want to make sure that those links are sent out the same way you would send it out in Google Calendar, just with the Zoom information in the body of the invitation. We did run into something over the summer where things like the whiteboard and some of the screen sharing options are not available on other devices. Chromebooks didn't have the whiteboard. Some of the iPads and iPhones didn't have some of the same features. So as a teacher, as the meeting host, you want to make sure that you're using a device that you're familiar with. I would recommend a PC or a Mac computer to do your sessions. It has the full menu of features. That way you don't lose anything. We talked about taking attendance. There is an attendance feature in Zoom, but it records the account name that the kids have signed in with. So if they signed in with mom's iPad, that's all you're going to get on your attendance report. The best thing to do would be to have like an attendance roster in front of you and kind of check them off. Or you can have the kids, if you're using the chat button, and let's say you have 125 kids or something like that, excuse me, you could have them just chat like here, 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 here. That way you have a running list of who was in the meeting. But I would not rely on the attendance feature in Zoom, especially if we're not authenticating our users. I know Dr. McIntyre has his meeting, so I want to get through this quick. There's some videos linked here. There's a video on how to schedule a meeting. There's a video on how to do breakout rooms. The Zoom people put together a really nice collection of videos, so I linked that here as well. And Woodland has a folder that I haven't linked yet, but I'm going to, of different icebreakers and activities that teachers use with their students on Zoom meetings. So things like bingo and scavenger hunts and things like that. I'm going to link those here too as soon as I grab the link after the meeting. So sorry to rush through at the end. I know some of you are planning to go sit in on the other Zoom just to see what's going on next year. But if you have any questions, I'm going to stick around. And if you have to go, bye.
Sarah, I just have a quick, what do you recommend the best way to practice just using the webinar feature on Zoom? I believe they have like an enable practice session on the webinar part, but, or I mean, more than
I
one.
don't know of any practice session. I've found most teachers tend to team up with a partner teacher or a co-teacher or their team, or I mean, I've sat in my bedroom with my iPad in one hand and my computer in the other and joined my own Zoom meeting just to see like what different features show up on different things like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like what protocol do you use? But I'm sure there's a few different ways that you can do it.
Yeah, you can do whatever. Just team up with somebody and be like, hey, I'm going to make the meeting. Can you join it like a student just so I can see what's working?
Right.
and then reverse roles.
But if I'm alone, then probably just go into webinars and edit.
Yeah,
Kind of do it that way.
probably. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just watch the videos. I mean, the video, especially the ones made by the Zoom people, the one that says like playlist, those are to date. So they should have like the same buttons and toolbars and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Sarah, excuse me, I know you mentioned something about, I guess, training in a different language. Is there any plans to have any type of training for our parents in different languages?
I know Steve Weber he's had, oh my goodness, like his whole electricity in his house went out and he had to get like so many things replaced and just got internet back. But I know he was talking about maybe offering some parent trainings. I don't know about translations. I don't know how that would work because neither he nor I are bilingual. So we would need someone else in those sessions to translate or someone else to lead those sessions.
Can I speak to that? Astrid, I'm an EL teacher at Stacy Middle School, and a lot of times I would ask the FRC, are you talking about translations for parents or for children?
No, for parents, because sometimes parents, you know, especially with some of the younger kids, the parents are the ones who have to do it. And
Sure.
and they're very, you know, some of them are not very familiar with
So one
technology.
thing you could do is invite one of the interpreters and if you can do a Zoom meeting with the families to show them and have the interpreter on the screen. So this year when I was having issues with kids getting on or how to navigate, I would ask one of the interpreters to come on this meeting with me, and they basically were translating, because I teach newcomers and how to navigate, and sometimes we would do what Sarah suggested, was like I'd let everybody leave and just have that one or two students who are having difficulty with an interpreter, and you could have mom and dad be there, and they can be translating. Just an idea.
Do you have a presentation? I know like you had like this, but do you have something more basic? Because then I could translate it, or I could have FRC help me with translation, and so I can email it to them so that they can read it while I'm explaining.
Well, this one, I mean, I know it's a little more complex, but this one more to teachers leading classes. I don't necessarily have anything for students in terms of like, this is what you need to know. That's something we can work on. Yes.
That would be helpful.
To answer Astrid's question, I guess you can do it ahead of time, sending all the instructions to Juliana Middle Court, and she will send it to the translator, which language you need, and then email it or share it with the parents, so they will prepare the student, their kid. I used to do it.
God bless you.
I'm saying it.
Yeah, no, it's just that like if she has something already made in English, it would be easier for me to go ahead and translate it into Spanish and Portuguese. I'm able to do that. I just kind of
need the information to start.
Yes, in English, and then I can just do that. And Patricia, and if you'd like, I can share it with you if I do that.
Sure, that'd be great. I have just found that it's difficult even for the families to be reading it in their own language.
Yes, it is.
Showing them and having someone on with me to help explain it. And then that's why I'm here, because I need to visually see it. And it doesn't really make much sense if I'm just reading it. I need to.
Right.
So if you could do me a favor, because this would make it work a little bit faster. If you get a chance to, I mean, even if you just log in, create your own meeting and then log in, I know your kiddos have Chromebooks or something, I don't know. But if you logged in as a student on one of those Zooms and just kind of wrote down like what the students would need to know, like how to join, what this button does, what it does. Like if you gave me a list of what you would want to explain to the kids, that's something that I could put together. I just don't know what features they would be struggling with. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So if you give me a list of what you want presentation to be, I can put that together.
Yeah, because Patricia, just so you know, I'm through my cohort, I have a YouTube channel, and I plan on putting YouTube videos for parents in Spanish, Portuguese, and English.
Well, when you do that, will you contact Jen or Janian or Kelly Sabini?
They both, Kelly's in my cohort. So
She is.
Yes, she's aware of it.
Yeah, because Kelly would probably be the one who would contact or send those things out to parents.
Okay.
For Stacy Middle School.
And I
Astrid,
know
where are you?
I'm at Woodland.
What school you're at
Woodland. Yes. And I'm sorry, Sarah, I know this is your meeting, but I have a quick question for Auda. Am I saying your name correctly? Jamie, I have a question. Would you be willing to help me with Arabic?
Of course.
Okay, so I'll send you an email.
Anytime you send me the email, you have my email address.
Yes, it's the Milford, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But is your name, how is your name on your email?
It's a J Auda.
Okay.
J, like Jamie.
Yes.
Julie.
Okay.
UDA at milfordma.com.
Okay. Thank you.
And Astrid, I actually go by Pam. So my full name is Patricia Ann Monahan. So my initials Pam. So I don't go by Patricia. Just my.
Okay.
That'll make it hard, Pam.
Yeah.
Sarah, excuse me, Sarah.
Yes.
I have one quick question.
Of course.
The meeting of Monday.
Yes.
I would like to go back to this meeting because I'm new. I'm not tech savvy at all, and I'm new to all this. So I would like to review that class, if you don't mind. Where do I find it?
So we're putting it together. We're in the process. It's all going to be on a website. And once I get it all, like I said, I think either tomorrow or Monday, we're going to send it out to all of the staff. This is where you can go to get it. So you'll be able to click on the slides, and you'll also be able to watch the recording of the session if you like. So once we get that all together, we'll send it out.
Thank you very much, because I had a little problem with my tablet. I signed in with my tablet, and it seems that it didn't go through.
Yeah.
So I had to do it again the next day on my PC.
Yep, that happens sometimes, but we'll get that out to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, no problem.
Sarah, do you want to not help me right now because you have to go to the meeting? I don't want to keep you from.
Oh no, I was going to go tomorrow. I'm not sitting on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Bye.
And the presentation you had today, that's also going to be on that link you're going to share with us?
So
Okay.
everything's going to be dropped onto that website. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Nice
Bye-bye.
meeting you, Patricia.
Okay,
Bye.
Pam.
Pam.
Hi, Jamie.
All right, lady.
Okay. So do I need to exit full screen? Or do I?
Yeah, you can.
See, that's my problem. Oh, see, that was my,
See, there you go.
but
Easy
that wasn't,
peasy.
hold on, but that was not, when you were sharing,
Mhm.
I could not see. Now I can see down at the bottom, mute, stop video, participants, share screen, reactions.
Mhm.